meaningful reconciliation from this. I should say it looks as though the king is about...
Only 5 minutes ago, the doors inside Windsor Castle opened, and Prince William stepped forward beside Princess Anne. The room changed instantly. William's face was controlled, but the strain around his eyes told a different story. Anne stood rigidly at his side, her hands clasped, her expression far more emotional than the public was used to seeing. No music played. No ceremonial introduction followed. William looked down at the statement, paused, and then began. He confirmed that King Charles had suffered a serious health crisis, and that every royal duty had been suspended until further medical advice. Reporters lowered their voices. Palace aides stopped moving. Even the smallest sound seemed too loud, and looked toward William as he spoke about their father, and for one brief moment, her composure appeared to break. The announcement was devastating, but it was not yet complete. William still had one final sentence to deliver, and when he reached it, the room fell into a silence so deep that Britain seemed to hold its breath, because that final sentence changed everything for the monarchy itself. William and appearing together was no ordinary palace decision. William stood there as the future of the monarchy, and stood beside him as the sister who had shared Charles's life through decades of duty, scandal, loss, and change. That combination immediately signaled seriousness, and is known for disciplined directness and an ability to remain composed even when the rest of the family is under pressure. Yet on this occasion, her expression seemed unusually heavy. She did not look toward the cameras. She kept her hands tightly clasped, as though holding herself steady. William carried a different burden. He was not speaking only as the Prince of Wales. He was speaking as a son forced to explain his father's condition to a watching nation. Together, they represented continuity, loyalty, and control. But their contrasting emotions created a question the statement itself had not answered. Why had the palace chosen both of them? And why was Queen Camilla not standing beside the king's son and sister? Some believed she had remained privately with Charles. Others wondered whether the situation was more serious than the palace was prepared to admit. William continued reading, but Anne's face revealed what his measured words could not. And with every second Camilla remained absent, that absence became impossible to ignore across Britain and far beyond it. The morning had reportedly begun like any other at Windsor Castle. King Charles reviewed official papers, spoke briefly with senior staff, and prepared for the duties scheduled ahead. Nothing in the early hours suggested that the day would end with the palace under such intense pressure. Then, according to the dramatized account, something changed. Members of staff noticed that Charles appeared unusually tired and uncomfortable. A meeting was cut short. His private medical team was contacted, and within minutes, the atmosphere inside the castle became tense. Doors closed. Phones rang. Aides moved quickly through corridors that had suddenly fallen silent. The king's remaining engagements were cancelled without explanation. William received an urgent call and immediately altered his schedule, and was also informed and began making her way to Windsor, asking for updates throughout the journey. Camilla remained close to Charles while doctors assessed whether the crisis was temporary or the beginning of something more serious. At first, even senior members of the household were given very little information. They only knew that Charles would not continue working, and that no public statement should be released until the family had been briefed. For William, the waiting became almost unbearable. He had faced difficult news before, but this time the uncertainty concerned his father, his king, and the future responsibilities waiting for him. Then the doctors delivered the warning he had been dreading. The warning was direct. King Charles could not continue at his normal pace. His doctors advised immediate rest, close monitoring, and a complete suspension of public duties while they assessed how his condition developed. Every engagement, journey, and ceremonial appearance was placed under review. For the palace, this was more than a medical decision. It created a vacuum that had to be filled without alarming the country. William listened in silence, as the doctors explained that the danger was not only the present crisis, but the strain that could follow if Charles returned too quickly, and asked the questions others seemed afraid to ask. How long would recovery take? What responsibilities could Charles still manage? And what happened if improvement did not come soon? Camilla remained near the king, shielding him from unnecessary pressure, while advisors began rewriting the royal calendar. William understood the consequences immediately. More duties would fall to him. More appearances. More decisions. More attention at a moment when Catherine and their children still needed stability of their own. No one used the word succession. No one needed to. The possibility hung over the room, unspoken but impossible to ignore. For William, the doctor's warning carried another meaning, one no son ever wants to confront about his father. William's private fear was not only about the crown. It was about losing the man behind it. As doctors spoke and advisors began discussing schedules, William remained outwardly calm. But beneath that control was the fear of a son who understood how quickly life could change. He wanted to stay beside Charles, not stand before cameras and reassure the country. Yet duty demanded the opposite. The public expected strength from the Prince of Wales. The palace expected decisions. His family expected him to remain present, even as Catherine continued rebuilding her health and their children sensed another wave of tension surrounding the household. William knew that every expression would be judged. If he appeared too composed, some would call him cold. If he allowed emotion to show, others might assume the situation was worse than the palace admitted. So he did what he had been trained to do. He carried the fear quietly before the announcement and reportedly stayed close to him. She reminded him to slow his breathing, focus on the words, and speak first as a son, then as an heir. For a moment, that steadied him. But when William looked across the room and saw Anne's face, he realized she was fighting a private fear of her own. And unlike William, she could no longer hide it. Princess Anne had spent a lifetime learning how to hide emotion behind duty. She had stood beside the monarchy through divorces, public scandals, family losses, and national crises. Her reputation was built on discipline. She rarely offered the cameras more than a controlled expression and a direct answer. That was why her reaction now felt so powerful. As William continued the statement and kept her hands tightly clasped in front of her, she avoided the reporter's eyes and stared instead at the floor, as though concentrating on remaining still. Then William stopped speaking as the Prince of Wales and referred to Charles simply as his father. Anne's expression changed. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes appeared to shine. For one brief second, the woman known for never breaking in public looked dangerously close to tears. The room noticed. So did William. He glanced toward her and gave the smallest nod, encouraging him to continue. Moments later, she moved slightly closer, a silent gesture of support between a sister and a son who were carrying the same fear in different ways. But her reaction raised a troubling question. Had Anne already been told something the public had not? Did she understand that Charles's recovery might be longer, harder, and more uncertain than the chosen statement suggested? William returned to the page and lowered her head. And when he reached the final line, even she looked unprepared for the words that followed. William lifted his eyes from the prepared statement and looked directly toward the room. His voice remained steady, but the pause before his final sentence made everyone lean forward. He thanked the public for its concern, asked for privacy, and confirmed that King Charles would step away from all public duties until doctors believed it was safe for him to return. Then came the words no one had expected to hear. There was no timetable, no promised date, no assurance that the king would resume his full schedule soon. William explained that the family's only priority was Charles's recovery and that future decisions would depend entirely on medical guidance. And lowered her head. Several reporters stopped writing. The silence inside the room became almost physical. William did not announce an abdication. He did not declare a transfer of power. Yet the uncertainty surrounding Charles's return immediately changed the meaning of every word that came before it. For the first time, Britain was forced to consider what an extended royal absence could mean. Who would represent the crown? Who would carry the king's responsibilities? And how much would now fall upon William, while Catherine was still rebuilding her own strength? William folded the statement and stepped back, and remained beside him, visibly shaken but composed. Within minutes, one question began spreading across Britain. Who would carry the monarchy if Charles could not return soon? The announcement immediately created questions far beyond King Charles's health. If the king could not return to public duties soon, the monarchy would still have to function. Ceremonies would continue. State responsibilities would remain. International visitors would still expect royal representation. Much of that pressure would fall on William. As Prince of Wales, he could be asked to attend more engagements, receive dignitaries, and represent the crown at important national events. But every additional duty would pull him further from Catherine and their children at a time when his family still needed stability. Princess Anne would also become more important. Her experience, discipline, and relentless work ethic made her the obvious figure to carry a heavier public schedule. Queen Camilla could continue supporting the king privately while representing him when appropriate. Behind the scenes, advisors would begin reviewing every appearance, journey, and ceremony on the royal calendar. The palace's challenge would be delicate. Show continuity without making it appear that Charles had already been replaced. No abdication had been announced. No formal transfer had been confirmed. Yet the balance inside the monarchy had clearly shifted. William was no longer preparing only for the future. He was being asked to carry more of it now. But behind the constitutional questions was a far more personal struggle involving Queen Camilla. Queen Camilla's absence from the announcement quickly became one of the most discussed details. Viewers had expected her to appear beside William and Anne, especially during a moment involving the king's health. Instead, her place remained empty, creating immediate concern. Some interpreted that absence as a sign that the situation inside Windsor was more serious than the palace had revealed. But there was another possibility. Camilla may have chosen to remain privately beside Charles while his doctors continued monitoring him. After months of carrying additional responsibilities and maintaining a demanding public schedule, she may also have been emotionally exhausted. The palace could have decided that William and Anne were the strongest figures to address the country. William as heir, and as Charles's sister. Even so, Camilla's absence deepened the tension. Online speculation spread rapidly. Was she too distressed to appear? Had Charles's condition worsened? Or was she protecting him from the pressure of another public moment? No official explanation answered those questions. Behind palace doors, however, Camilla was reportedly focused on only one thing: keeping Charles calm and shielding him from unnecessary fear. While Britain debated her absence, the family faced a more difficult reality. The hardest conversation was not happening before cameras. It was unfolding privately, behind closed doors. Behind closed doors, the royal family faced questions no public statement could answer. William and Camilla and senior palace advisors reportedly gathered to discuss Charles's recovery, the growing pressure on the monarchy, and the duties that could no longer be delayed. The first priority was clear: the king had to rest. William was told to prepare for a heavier schedule, and immediately offered to take on more engagements. Camilla insisted that the palace avoid language that might create panic or suggest decisions had already been made about the crown. Catherine supported William privately, despite still protecting her own health and family routine. George, Charlotte, and Louis were kept away from the most alarming details, but they could sense that something serious had changed. The family agreed that unity was essential. No public disagreement. No visible confusion. No suggestion that Charles had already been replaced. But beneath the formal planning was a deeper emotional struggle. William feared being pulled away from Catherine and the children, and feared what prolonged uncertainty might do to her brother. Camilla feared that Charles would blame himself for placing pressure on everyone else. Then, according to the dramatized account, the king made one quiet request, and it changed the tone of the entire meeting. Charles's request was simple, but it carried the weight of the crown. He did not want fear to become the family's public message. According to the dramatized account, the king asked William to lead with calm, not panic. He reminded him that the monarchy had survived uncertainty before, and that duty meant remaining steady when the future was unclear. 2. And Charles gave a different responsibility. He asked her to keep the family united, challenge decisions when necessary, and ensure that emotion never became division. Camilla was told not to carry the burden alone. Charles understood how much pressure had fallen on her, and he wanted the palace to protect her as she had protected him. Even while resting, his thoughts remained fixed on service. He worried about cancelled engagements, disappointed communities, and the possibility that his health might overshadow the work he believed mattered. William listened without interrupting. For the first time, the role of heir felt less like preparation and more like reality. Anne's earlier reaction now made sense. She was not only afraid for her brother, she understood the responsibility he was placing in their hands. At that moment, the announcement stopped being only about a king's health. It became a test of the whole royal family. For now, King Charles's condition remains a private family matter, surrounded by uncertainty. William and Anne's appearance represented more than duty. It showed a family trying to remain united while confronting fear behind palace walls. The coming weeks could place greater pressure on William and Camilla and Catherine. Every appearance and every absence will be watched closely. But strength does not mean feeling no fear. It means continuing despite it. The crown may symbolize stability, but the people carrying it are still sons, daughters, spouses, and parents. Do you believe Prince William is ready to take on more of the king's responsibilities? Share your thoughts below and subscribe to Royal Latest Report for more royal stories.